Good late-ish afternoon to everyone. We're so happy that you're here. My name is Philip Fernberg. I am the chair of the board of directors for Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship. We are very, very grateful to have an esteemed panel before us. And this is going to largely be something that we hope is very conversational and very informative for us all. For those of you who are not as familiar with Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, we are a global nonprofit organization that is dedicated to living and learning principles of Latter-day Saint doctrines and how they are enraptured with earth stewardship and our care for the earth. And we believe those are fundamental principles of the gospel, and we hope that we can always be putting an awareness out to the world that it is in fact a principle and help people to practice that principle. And we do so in a variety of ways. We have informational things, we provide resources, educational resources, faith-based resources. We also convene diverse groups all around the world. We currently have 12 chapters all spread out across the globe. And we, in fact, even have the blessing of having some of those chapter leaders here with us today. Just really quickly before I introduce George and the panel, I wanted to recognize that we have our board of directors here as well. You can just kind of raise your hands and go around the room. We've got Mary Kay Smith there. We have Jared Meek. We have George, Peter Ashcroft. We have myself. We have Anastasia Jesperson, who's over there. We have Teresa Gomez. And we have myself and Randy Miguel over there on the side. And then, of course, we have former members of the board here who are part of our panel, which is George and Chip. And we gracefully excuse Ben Abbott, who couldn't be here today. And we are also very grateful to those who will be tuning in to this meeting. We're sad we couldn't live stream it, but we know that it's going to have a life on the internet afterwards, and we hope that it gets distributed widely and that people will be able to join this conversation. Before we begin, we also would like to ask one of our chapter leaders from the Philippines chapter, Danny Soleta, to come up and give us an opening prayer. Thanks, Danny.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this opportunity that we have to be able to gather here as members of LDSES. We are grateful for those members who are attending via Zoom. We are grateful for them able to attend. We are grateful for the earth that we live on, that we're able to breathe and to enjoy the things that we see and we feel and we breathe. We're grateful for the opportunity to live at this time, to help to be a steward here in this earth for the wonderful creations that our Heavenly Father given to us. As we proceed to this meeting, we ask you to bless us and those panelists that were here to discuss things regarding our duties and responsibilities. And we say all of these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thanks, Danny. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention all the people that helped to put this event on. It is a bit of an effort to organize everything, and so we just wanted to thank our outreach committee and also members of our local Salt Lake City chapter, and Mike Maxwell, who's back there, our chapter leader. Thank you for all of the help that y'all provided. And thanks to Chloe, who's our outreach coordinator, for being here. We were blessed to have her come in town. She normally lives in Texas. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to our moderator. And I want to first tell you a little bit about him. George Hanley is a professor of interdisciplinary humanities at BYU. He is a member of the Provo City Council. He is a critic, a scholar, a writer, and civic engagement extraordinaire. And he has a plethora of essays and books that all of you should read if you haven't. And he really has helped over the past decade, not only as a founding member of this organization, but as somebody who is really embedded in both the LDS and the environmental communities, finding ways to bridge a recently perceived gap in our history between the two. And we are very grateful to have him moderate this panel. So please give a round of applause to George.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for all you do, and thank you to the board for putting this event together. I'm really happy to be here. Teresa asked me to say a few words to start before I introduce the panelists about my own understanding of the word stewardship, and I'll try to be brief. I'll just say that, I think growing up, I understood stewardship mostly in terms of the parable of the talents. And I guess as a young kid, I thought that sounded like I needed to be really good at investment and make smart investments so I could make more money from the little money I had, which was not the best understanding of that parable, but I think it was sort of based on the idea that a steward, of course, is not an owner, but is someone who is accountable to somebody else. And I think that's solid ground, but as I've gotten more and more involved in environmental stewardship, as a component of my discipleship in my religious life, I think I've understood it much differently. I still think of it as I don't own anything, but I think one of the things that formula doesn't account for is the way in which the earth is constantly giving to me, and that my relationship to the earth is therefore a reciprocal relationship. And I'm using that word in part on the basis of being very much inspired by the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. But I think reading her helped me understand something that I see very clear in LDS teachings, and that is that Jesus Christ is the creator of the world, and that, as we read in section 88, he is the light of the moon, he is the light of the stars, he's the light of the sun, he is the power by which those lights were made, and that when we are interacting with the natural world, when we are eating and sheltering and traveling and clothing ourselves, we are receiving gifts from our Savior. And I think for me, the core meaning of stewardship is to reciprocate that generosity that is free, it is unconditional, it's available to us if we have the eyes to see it. His glory and his goodness and his mercy are available to us in his creations. Every waking moment, every time my heart beats without my knowing, every time I breathe without my knowing, I am depending on the grace of my Savior. And I think that has helped me to understand that what I'm doing when I'm practicing stewardship is I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to enter into a relationship of reciprocity whereby I am learning and receiving from the Lord, and I am returning and giving what I can as well in turn. And that to me feels more like a relationship, not only with the creation, but with the Creator, and that becomes central to everything else that motivates me in the restored gospel when I'm serving my fellow human beings and when I'm striving to grow closer to my Savior. Taking care of his creations doesn't seem like a separate thing. It's integrated into that life of discipleship. So those are my thoughts about stewardship, and I hope those are useful. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from these wonderful panelists. So let me introduce them in the order that they appear to my left. I'm joined here immediately by Teresa Gomez, who's a board member of LDSES Stewardship, and she currently works in the geospatial lab at the BYU Library and loves spreading information about through maps. And she is a self-described green missionary. She's a wonderful human being. On top of that, I've enjoyed being colleagues and friends with her for a number of years, and she's just a light and a joy. Next to her is Chip Oscarson, who's a former board member of LDS Stewardship and is a humanities professor in my same department, who I've had the joy and honor of working with for many, many years now. And he currently serves as the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Education. And everyone who knows Chip at BYU knows him to be a man of great energy, creativity, integrity, and reliability. He's really one of the great joys of my life. To the left of Chip is Lucy Harper, who's a student at BYU studying biodiversity and conservation and a proactive member of the Student Sustainability Initiative that is ongoing at BYU. She also works on a hydroponic farm in Pleasant Grove where she cultivates delicious salad greens and spreads the message of local and sustainable agriculture. And it just so happens she's a student of mine as well, and really one of the most delightful students I've ever had the privilege to teach at BYU. Finally, Shelley Parkin is a longtime member of LDSES Stewardship, and she aspires to be a sunshine farmer. I would like to know what that means. A master gardener and a native plant nurturer, and she grew up on a potato farm in southeast Idaho, outside of the booming metropolis of Blackfoot, and has lived in Salt Lake Valley for over 35 years. So we're so grateful to have all of you here. And we have some pre-submitted questions that I'm going to ask the panel, and then we're going to have time to hear questions from the audience, and then I will wrap up with one final question shortly before the end of the hour, at the top of the hour. So the first question is, how can we be environmentally conscious in a ward setting? How do we help ward members experience stewardship as a joyful and integral part of being followers of Christ? And please give specific examples from the ward sustainability guide. So.
That's my question. Well, I'm happy to be here, and I really wanted to turn this question over to Mary Kay, because a few years ago, she and another member of LDS Earth Stewardship gave a presentation on some specific ward callings that they were able to be called to. They volunteered, and their bishop accepted that. And no, it's okay. Do you want me to keep talking or wait? Okay. Anyway, their callings were, Mary Kay developed a green team, and I forgot the name of the other person who did your presentation, but she was the ward sustainability leader in a student ward in Stanford, at Stanford University. And that was really inspirational to me. A lot of what we are talking about has been put into the Ward Sustainability Guide, which you can find on the LDS Earth Stewardship website. But a few of the things that are part of that guide, a lot of it is just awareness. I mean, trying to help your ward members kind of think a little bit more about what it means to be an Earth Steward. I was able to do a lesson on the 5th Sunday in January just this year, using Bishop Kaze's talk from October 2022 conference. And it went really well. And we had a really good discussion. I don't know that anyone's brought up any of those topics since then, but we at least started. And I just recently, at the Brazil meeting that Elder Christofferson was at, and Bishop Kaze, they announced that the wards are going to start using paper sacrament cups rather than plastic. So that's great. That's part of the Ward Sustainability Guide. So check that off. We don't even have to worry about that anymore, right? Some of the other things you can do in the Ward Sustainability Guide, and our ward has kind of worked on this a little bit, is we bought some looms, and you can take grocery bags that you have so many of and weave them into mats that then can be given to Stitching Hearts International, various organizations. And if people lay on those mats in refugee camps or homeless, it raises the temperature about 40 degrees is what we've been told. So we do that sometimes. We make quilts out of old sheets and things, other things that people use. So we're not going out and buying a whole bunch of new stuff. And it also, the sustainability guide also talks a little bit about trying to focus some of your service projects for the youth or other things on different aspects of nature, like planting trees, working in the local parks, doing cleanup outside. And one thing I've tried to kind of encourage our neighborhood to do is to go along in the winter and the fall and scrape the leaves out of the gutter so that the water flows down into the water drain more freely, because that's one of the things the Jordan River Commission says is something that's easy for people to do. So it's just a lot about trying to help people be aware and think about the fact that we have been blessed with this earth and that we have a responsibility to think about how we're using the resources that the Lord's blessed us with. So those are some of the things in the Word Sustainability Guide. Recommend it to you. So, any questions about that or any other examples? Like I said, there's lots of people here that I know have done a lot of different things.
Can I talk? Yes. I love all of that, and I really highly recommend everyone taking a look at the World Sustainability Guide. I think one of the things that has been kind of fun for me is to take advantage of the things that we're already doing. A lot of the time, our members are actually good stewards, right? They just don't make that connection between like what we're actually doing and that being Earth stewardship. So it's kind of like helping people realize that a service project where we're cleaning up the park is Earth stewardship, and then take that opportunity to teach a little bit more about the doctrine behind Earth stewardship and things like this. So we can have a lot of education, teach lessons, firesides, service projects, low waste event. We throw away a lot of food sometimes during church parties, so kind of like managing all those things. Just there's a lot of things that we already do. Our members just don't realize that that's Earth stewardship. So to me, that's having kind of like a fun thing to see and show people that you already are a good steward. And that it usually encourages people to keep doing things.
All right. If there are no other thoughts on that question, I'll turn to the next question, which is a pretty simple one. And that is how to avoid eco-guilt.
And that was kind of like the question that I was assigned to respond. I don't think you can fully avoid it, right? Like once you know, and I have some family members here that know that last week we had our Thanksgiving party and I was feeling pretty burdened by the amount of plastic cups that we used that day, those 2 days. So you will feel it, right? And you can always try your best, and sometimes you just have to be okay with what your best is at different points. Like, I wish I could have had everyone use glass cups at that party, but it was impossible, right? But what helps me in my very, very personal life is I believe that we shouldn't run faster than we can, but we also can receive revelation about what we can do, right? So in my daily conversations with Heavenly Father, I feel like every once in a while I've received some promptings or ideas of the things that I could be doing better, right? And I just describe myself as a green missionary, right? And I think that I might not be saving the planet in a lot of ways, but I do think one of my talents, and that's something that I have come to terms with, is just talking about these things in a way that can be compelling to people, right? So in my interactions with people and my study, the scripture study and the gospel study, I get all these ideas, like all these things that I can share with people, right? And that's what I've acknowledged to be my forte, right? Everyone has different talents, and we can all receive revelation about which ways we can help, right? Some people put programs at universities together, and we are going to get a lot of students that will learn a lot about this, right? Find your talent, talk to God about what it is that you can do. And the other thing that God does really nicely to us is that if you ask him, am I doing a good job, or what am I doing the right thing, you will also know which things you're doing right. And that kind of relieves a little bit of that eco-guilt. There's no way we can do everything right now, but we can keep trying, and we can try to use her unique superpowers, sustainability superpowers, to do the good we can do.
If I could jump in too, to extend some things that I think, some really good points that Teresa made. Approaching some of these questions less out of fear, which is sometimes hard given the kinds of crises that that we know we're facing, but more out of gratitude, I think can help inflect a little bit how we think and how we approach it. Right? If that remains our primary focus is gratitude for the gifts that that we've been given, we're more careful with the things that that we have, and as well the something that you're saying, Teresa, that really resonates with me is that there's not kind of a one-size-fits-all kind of solution to these, to these issues and questions. And if stewardship is about relationship and this kind of reciprocal, specifically kind of a reciprocal relationship, then that's going to look different at different times and at different places. And so, being guided by the Spirit and the spirit of love and gratitude, I think in some ways can both help how I feel about my own actions and what's motivating my own actions, as well as how I interact with others. Because a lot of times that guilt is either used by others to to kind of manipulate and to control in a certain kind of way. And it's hard because sometimes it's a good thing that we're trying to do, but I really don't think that the ends justify the means, right? That we can't lose track of in our stewardship that the environment that surrounds us is never more important than the people that also surround us, right? And I think that we sometimes get in a situation where we think we need to choose one over the other, but that's always a false binary, right? That it's not the spotted owls or the loggers. There's always another way to to kind of think about that and to approach that if we're creative and if we're loving and if we're grateful. And so for me, I think that kind of helps to avoid that guilt being the main motivating factor, which will almost inevitably lead to hopelessness, which isn't productive.
If I might add really quick, especially from our gospel context and the opportunity, guilt might go in hand with shame, but guilt is sort of more an opportunity to repent or a calling to change. And so I think it's really important that instead of finding that hopelessness, instead being motivated toward kind of a repentance, an opportunity to look at our lives a little bit differently. And, but yeah, making sure that we put people first. I mean, not first necessarily, but that we're keeping our relationships alive, both with the land and the earth and with people, but thinking about it as sort of an opportunity to change.
Thank you. Those are great thoughts. I'll just quickly add that I think, shame also leads to blame, right? We start blaming others or blaming ourselves and start pointing fingers and judging instead of the principle is to be anxiously engaged in a good cause, as Teresa was saying. If you can just find something that gives you traction in your own stewardship and gives you a sense of integrity and purpose and fulfillment, I think that's the trajectory we want to get on.
George, if I could just add one thing here too. I think that so often we think of environmental problems as these discrete problems to solve. And sometimes they are, right? That there's a very specific, kind of cause of something and a solution to something. But increasingly we're facing really complex environmental questions and problems, right? I mean, climate change would be, the kind of quintessential where it is so entangled with so many different, interests and things that are causing it, all this sort of thing. And it can be overwhelming and frustrating. And this, to this point about, kind of blame, if sometimes that we stop thinking so much about trying to assign that kind of blame and think about the environment as a relationship that we have, it's never going to be solved. And that might seem a little bit frustrating on the one hand, but it's all about kind of, and I don't know if the right word is testing us or giving this opportunity to exercise our agency constantly every single day. And that's always going to be the case. It's always been the case in the past and will always be the case in the future. It's not that we will arrive at a time when, okay, we can check that off the list. We don't have to think about that anymore. I mean, it's kind of like our relationship with the poor, right? The poor we have always among us. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't work anxiously to alleviate, the problems of poverty. But it's foolish to think that we'll ever get to the point where poverty is no longer an issue for anyone anymore, right? Maybe in some future Zion, society will begin to approach that more fully, but it will always be a relationship that we need to be asking ourselves, what can I do? And how will this change me? And how will this bring me closer to God and to others? And I think if we think about the environment in the same kind of way, it maybe removes this tendency to want to always assign blame, which causes division in unproductive ways, especially in our neighborhoods and in our wards, right? Which it's really important that we avoid that kind of dynamic.
Probably also avoid eco-pride, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we might be like, oh, I'm vegetarian, I walk everyone. And also it's not like, that might put like shame and blame on other people. I think it's just that relationship that we're nourishing. We're trying to help each other here. No one is better than the other. We do our best. So eco-guilt and eco-pride, I don't think none of those are great.
I've got a good, sticky, thorny question. How can Latter-day Saints become exemplars of earth stewardship while avoiding counterproductive political partisanship? There seems to be some confusion between political beliefs and gospel doctrines in our church. How can we assist with sorting that out with respect to earth stewardship?
I'll take a first stab at this, not that I have a definitive answer, to offer up. There's a quote from Ezra Taft Benson that has been a powerful motivator for me, in that he was speaking to the graduates of at BYU Hawaii, and this is back, I think it's sometime in the 60s, is when he was talking, and he was talking specifically about environmental issues. And of course, this is a time when a lot of environmental issues here in the United States had not quite been polarized in the way that they are today. But he makes the comment to the graduates that if you don't understand the spiritual principles that underlie these problems, you'll never ultimately solve, these issues. And that, to me has led me to try to think, deep and hard about, well, what does that mean that there's a spiritual principle, behind all of these issues? What might that look like? I think one of them is that, and we alluded to this a little bit earlier, that our relationship with the gifts of the physical environment and the other living things that we share this environment with, this gift and this relationship that we're in with it is something that draws us closer to God. It's something that can help us to feel the Spirit and can is part of our exercising our agency to develop spiritually. But the other important component of that is how I relate to other people. And if I'm always remembering that my relationship with these gifts of God are not to the exclusion of other people, but actually that they touch on and they involve other people, I approach this differently, right? And I approach it, with this idea of love for God and love for my neighbor. If that's my starting point, the chance of collapsing into partisanship and division is less. And that's not to say that we shouldn't stand up for things that we believe are important. But what it is to say is that in so doing, I never do it without recognizing the person or the people that I'm talking to are also children of God, with the same kind of challenges and of living in an imperfect world with imperfect knowledge and needing to live by faith, and that goes a long way if I learn how to listen and really understand why we don't understand each other and why we don't agree on this particular issue. And in working with many students over the years, it's interesting how often someone just needs to be heard, and as soon as they feel like they're being heard, it seems like they start to listen a little bit better as well. So that's where I would start, is recognizing the divinity in all of those around us, in addition to the divinity in creation, and let that be our starting point for our engagement with each other, and that we're honest and that we're charitable then in that engagement.
Like everything you said. I think one of the things that I try to do is find common ground. Like, we're all humans on this earth having a mortal experience, right? And I love something that when I've listened to George talk, he talks about like the consequences of climate change in your grandkids, right? You always talk about, by the time my grandkids are my age, things are going to be kind of interesting, right? Like, everyone has relatives, everyone is worried about their children. So I always try to find something that will help us realize that we're the same. Like, we think differently, but we have very similar needs, and we care about the very similar people. And that usually seems to work for me. Also, like, coming from a place of love and authenticity, like when people see that you are really not trying to blame or put shame on anyone, you're just trying to speak what you care about. That has been very useful for me. Like, just being very authentic and trying to find common ground. Again, I think a lot of times, even us come in kind of like a defensive body when we're going to have this conversation with my cousin that it's conservative, right? Like, I'm already like, But if we don't do that, if we're coming kind of like more like seeing people for who they are without a political color, that usually helps.
Other thoughts?
No?
I really think that a huge part of it is what Chip mentioned about love, and remembering that the people that you may be totally have a different opinion or perspective than are still our brothers and sisters, and that the Lord put us here with those two commandments, to love him and to love our fellow men. And so I keep trying to remember that. And that was one thing that I appreciated when I did the lesson in our ward, is that we were able to avoid any sort of political discussion. We just focused on, this is the Lord's earth. He loves us. He wants us to love other people. And this is a way for us to show that we care about our fellow men, is to be aware of what we're doing with the resources that the Lord's given us.
When they did the research, but the other generations aren't too far behind. It's something between 60 and 65%. And so there's really not too much of a difference between our generations, which I find really beautiful. I think there can be another division made, right? There can be the political division, but also the generational division that could be made. And when I reflected on my own life, my peers totally motivate me to be conscious of my impact on the environment. But I mean, these people do too. And my parents, the way my mom especially has encouraged me to do something that's important for me. I think that completely is in line with the scriptures that say that the hearts of the children are turned to the fathers, and the hearts of the fathers are turned to the children. I know that this is very much supposed to be a collaborative endeavor. We have been born into a time where, these environmental topics have been pretty normalized, especially in the United States. And we realize that this is the future that we're inheriting. And so for me and my peers, it's very important that we act. And I think that action really should take all kinds of roles, that it can be as simple as educating, helping people be more aware of issues, and then also actually getting out there and studying things in school so that we're more aware of things, and participating in projects that help, alleviate poverty and these negative impacts. But more than anything else, I know that it can be a collaborative effort between generations, and I'm really grateful for the example that I've had and the motivation that I've had both from my peers and my older generations, my mentors.
Anyway, go ahead.
Can I follow up?
Please.
With a question? Lucy, because one thing that I've noticed that has changed, and I think that Yale data actually backs this up too, that you're referencing, people are, and younger people particularly, are more kind of aware of these issues. And but the other thing that also traces with that is that whereas we've shifted from kind of various flavors of denialism to hopelessness, right? That somehow we jumped over the stage where we actually kind of work into, and that's not just your generation, but particularly those closer to your generation. How do you maintain hope, and what's the role of hope in doing this? Because I sense among students of your age far more now than I remember 20 years ago. A sense of hopelessness, which leads to its own kind of inaction, right? That like, what's the point anyway?
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for that question. And like, I feel bad because I don't feel like I can answer it on a broad level, but for myself personally, it comes from my faith completely. Like that acknowledgement that I have a Heavenly Father who loves me, and the plan is bigger than just, this is our time on earth and there's nothing after. Because I believe in the impact of eternity and this being a preparation for something after, that's, I think, what motivates me to do good and to not have hopelessness, and to know that I have so much support and that I found such a good community. I think that's a giant thing that our generation needs is community and people working together, feeling like we belong. And gratefully for me, I feel like I have found a lot of myself in taking action on these things.
I really like I have the privilege to also work with a lot of the students at BYU that are part of the sustainability initiative. And I think one of the best things that we can do as older people is to trust them, right? Like trust, because a lot of times you're like, oh, these people are so young, what do they know? Or what can they do? And I've come to see and witness that they can do so much. And when they get together, there's this magic that happens. They have a lot of courage and they build up on each other and they learn and they're willing to take action. So providing a space for them to take that action, trusting that they can do it, it's beautiful and they will take it. Another thing that I think is very important too in that realm is that a lot of times I've heard that everyone is worried about the youth in the church and how we're losing a lot of youth in the church, right? Like we have so much information, everyone's being pulled in different directions. And yes, some young people are leaving the church. And I think from what I've seen is that a lot of times students feel like there's all these things that they can't do because of the gospel, right? I can't drink or I can't smoke. There's all these things that I can't do. But what I've seen working with the students is that we can provide a lot of things that we can do, right? Like when we talk about environmental stewardship at BYU, we have a long list of all the things that we want to do, we need to do, and this empowers students, and then this also brings them back to God, right? Like Lucy just said that, like the thing that keeps me hoping is my faith. So we can ignite young people's faith by bringing this gospel topic into the conversation, right? So if you're a youth leader and you're in charge of planning mutual or activity day, I don't know how you call it now, you can bring this in and they will love it, right? And it provides a space for them to get closer to God, to take action and to create that community. And that feeling of belonging is what we all need right now, right? Like we have a lot of crises. There's an environmental crisis, but there's also a loneliness crisis. So there's a lot of things that we can help as we're working on taking care of the air. Because again, it's relationships. It's not just one problem. We can solve a lot of problems or help a lot of problems at the same time.
Well, and this is what environmentalism, generally speaking, has been lacking, right? That people of faith kind of wading in and explaining what motivates them. And this is what I think that, is our contribution to this. It's absolutely everything that you're saying in terms of how it kind of blesses us, but the world needs that voice, right? The world needs people of faith to stand up and say that I'm not doing this despite my faith, but because of it, right? And that we know that it is, it is faith that links us to our values, and our faith and our values is what motivates action. And the world needs faith and values, right? And so I just think that it was a wrong turn that environmentalism took at some point in time, especially in the Anglo-American context, that it became more and more secular, and politically has left faith groups out of the question, because I think that what you're both talking about is just absolutely right, and is the future actually for environmentalism, because it suddenly becomes much more inclusive. Not only in including people of faith, which make up a majority of the world population, but it also helps to avoid this kind of dichotomy that we were talking about before, where it's either the environment or people, and that's just a false binary, right? And our faith helps us to manage and negotiate that.
Yeah. I mean, stewardship is so interdisciplinary. It's an ecology where things interact, and that reciprocity is so important. So our faith really does matter.
Time for questions from the audience. Any questions from those of you who've joined us in person today? Yeah, please.
You guys have already kind of spoke on this when you were talking about the political aspects of this issue, but just like recently I saw on social media the church's new initiative, right, with church buildings and making them more sustainable, and seeing a lot of the rhetoric in that post. A lot of it is very people within the church who worship the same way, worship in the same buildings, worship together, being almost diametrically opposed theologically to a lot of these issues. And my question for you is, if there is a space, how appropriate it is to have these theological, I don't want to call them debates, but theological discussions about stewardship and how it's a principle of the gospel of Christ, not in contradiction to the gospel of Christ.
They're the panel, I'm the moderator, so.
Yeah, just
okay.
Is there appropriate...
Do you need me to repeat it in the microphone? Okay. If I don't get this right, but I sort of get the sense that the question is, can we say more about how to have this kind of discussion? To what extent does it become divisive? Maybe is also part of what I heard you getting at, that the little you've seen on social media seems like it's pretty contentious, and it sounds like Latter-day Saints are, at the throats of other Latter-day Saints over their different theological interpretations of what stewardship might mean. Is that kind of, so how do we navigate that, or how do we resolve that, or?
Yeah, and if it's appropriate to have that kind of, I don't want to call it a debate, but.
Yeah, is it appropriate to have that kind of debate? Would it be counterproductive? Yeah. Okay, any?
So we're talking about actually having that debate in a classroom setting in church.
I teach a lot in church. And I want to talk about these things, and I want people to share their opinions, but also it's like, when you just keep things appropriate,
I think that's a hard one, because it can easily devolve, especially if people feel threatened. And so, I don't think I have the answers. I know I've actually just been recently reading George's book, The Hope of Nature, and he talks about how sometimes we, and he can correct me if I read it wrong incorrectly, but a lot of church members have this idea that, when the Savior comes, it doesn't matter what the world is like, he'll fix it and he'll fix everything. So climate change is not an issue, or we don't have any responsibility in that. And so I think maybe putting those questions out there in a lesson where you're talking about our earth stewardship potential, and just saying, this is kind of what some people may think, let's talk a little bit about that. And there's a lot of information on the LDS Earth Stewardship website that gives quotes that talk about that. And and point out that the Lord didn't send us here to totally ruin the planet and then he's going to all fix it. That doesn't have any bearing. I mean, that doesn't flow with our church doctrine at all. And so that's something we have to really help people see, maybe. And it's a scary thing, and some of them are going to be threatened, and it's probably not going to go well at some points.
I just toss in, I've a couple of times done lessons similar to what you described on a fifth Sunday in both my home ward and another ward, and then know of others who've done similar things. And one thing that has been helpful is starting off first with something like reading. Now we have Bishop Cose's talk, so reading some of his talk, maybe showing the short, it's just 2 minutes, a little bit less, I think, of the video. It's on the gospel topics, because people within the church, when you say, this is from the church website, and I'm just going to show it, and it just kind of creates a spirit of harmony. And then you can read a little bit from that gospel topic on environmental conservation, and it's nice to read it verbatim, enough that they get a sense, this is from the church website. And it's automatically, therefore, a little easier versus something that might come from, say, LDSES or Stewardship. And try to have the focus start from that point. And then I think it does help create the spirit where there's less, I can't say it would guarantee there wouldn't be contention, but less likely to have people say things that are going to be in opposition enough to create the kind of negative tension you're talking about. But where you can still be honest and talk about, maybe have differences of view and experience. That certainly exists.
I've wondered if you bring it back, because Sister Eubanks at one of the fall forums talked about our stewardship in relation to creating Zion. And if you think about that principle, one heart, one mind, I mean, if we were to try and talk about how do we create Zion and what does one mind mean, it doesn't mean we all think the same or we all feel the same, but maybe that could help us come to some better understanding of what that means.
I have some hopes, right? I think from all places where we can talk about this, I want our church to be a safe place to talk about this, right? Like, there's a lot of fighting on social media and other platforms, but from all the places where we can talk about this, I hope our church is a safe place, right? And I don't know, like, when I was a missionary, you have companionship inventory every week, right? And that's where kind of like you talk about the difficult conversations between the companionship. But 90% of the time, after that companionship inventory, things were so much better, right? You feel so much better, like the companionship is better, the relationship with the companionship, with your companion is like nicer, like people understand other people's points of view, and then you can work together and things go well. So my hope is that we make room for these conversations. We make church a safe space to do this. And hopefully, and again, I think we should pray about this and always bring the Spirit, bring the doctrine. And when we have that there, it becomes a safe place, and then we move forward, right? Like, we don't have to super agree, but we can talk those differences, connect, understand each other, and hopefully take some action.
Well, particularly in the context of teaching in the church, I think, personal opinion, I suppose, but the primary focus should be helping everyone to feel the Spirit, not to change minds. I don't like it when I'm being taught by someone who's trying to just change my mind and not help me to feel the Spirit, right? And let the Spirit, kind of teach us together and edify us together. And it's interesting that the model of teaching, that the Doctrine and Covenants particularly lays out is not just one person should be speaking, right? That, that all should be, edified of all. And all be edified by the Spirit. And I think that if we approach it that way, the chance of us listening and helping others to feel heard is increased, and then feel the Spirit.
All these this is one of 100 topics, right, that can get very contentious very quickly in a ward setting if we're not careful, right? So I don't think it's any different in that sense, right? I mean, we have doctrine, and we can talk about the doctrine, and it may very well be that people in the room have very, very strong feelings on both sides, and it will still require all the same skills that if we were going to be talking about family relations or sexuality or, civic engagement and the importance of that in the church. Somebody's going to have a really strong opinion. And, the truth is, a lot of the times, I think in a ward setting, what's going on is a very civil way of people trying to say, I actually strongly disagree with brother so-and-so, and here's my very diplomatic way of saying why I think he's wrong. And sometimes that's kind of funny, but it's also beautiful, right? That the Elder Oaks has pointed us to being peace, and President Nelson being peacemakers and moderating and unifying is what Elder Oaks has said we really ought to be aiming for all the time in our discourse with other people. So I think Latter-day Saints are being called to be moderators and unifiers in contentious issues. And the environment's one of them. There's no question. And I think that's been unfortunate. And I think it's created a lot of difficulty around having this conversation in a productive way within our own faith context. But we have a responsibility to our doctrine, and we have an opportunity to offer a different way of thinking about environmental problems and stewardship without the kind of rancor and rhetoric that we see in the national discourse. I mean, years ago, and Chip and I are also not only in the same department, we're in the same ward, but years ago in our priesthood quorum, I was asked to give a lesson on stewardship. This is maybe 15 years ago. And there was a brother in the audience who was just lit up angry that I was even having the conversation. And it was very difficult to, establish trust with him. But we've gotten to know each other much better over the years, and we've had other conversations as well as the same one in other contexts much more successfully than that first iteration, where something I said and the way I phrased it just kind of triggered him, and I didn't see it coming. So I mean, we're gonna have those kinds of experiences, but I think if we just keep, I love a statement by Lowell Benyon who said, if we can just keep talking, I'm pretty sure we can work this out. If we just keep the discourse open and flowing and loving and trusting, then good things can happen. So we're almost at the top of the hour, and you wanted us to be done by
5:10.
So another 5 minutes or so. I have one final question, but I saw a hand in the back. We have one more question from the public, and then I've got one final question. Or a comment? Yeah.
You guys are amazing. I felt like an island for my entire life and moving here to Utah. I love this. But what I was going to share, it speaks to that question, is about 15 years ago, I worked on a project with a couple of high councilmen in my stake. We were going to put a community garden on one of the properties. We had just built a building. And it went all the way through, and then we decided, or the church decided that the building was going to go to a different stake. So I got really frustrated with, I had this great community outreach opportunity. Anyway, the ward, we had the same problem. And this was probably a decade and a half ago. And what I had done, I had taught seminary for 100 years and took my youth in the springtime to, I taught food gardening for the economically disadvantaged in Austin on the east side. Some of you Austinites probably know Sustainable Food Center. So I taught for them for years. So I took my seminary students out to be a part of that, to be a part of digging in the dirt, to be a part of creating, food resource within your own environment, things that are foundational to us as a culture. Latter-day Saints, we break the ground, right? That's what this valley is. And that extrapolated into an entire stake opportunity where we built 275 raised beds throughout the state. It was a big activity, and we did that. We had a couple of members in our stake who donated the wood and the soil and everything. And it became a group endeavor for persons who were yeah, you don't want to do this here. We don't want to be a part of that. It's not a priority. Lord's going to see fit. That's why we're going to burn all these things. But all at once, it became this thing that brought us all together. And I think that what you guys do here is just incredible. And feeling like I was by myself out there doing that, my heart is warm. I feel like I've won the lottery, seeing this community and you individuals and as a group. So thank you. I didn't mean to digress on that, but I felt like it was a really cool thing that we were able to do. And yeah, I never got community gardens, but I walk through the building properties here in Utah, and it makes me crazy thinking of how much land we have that we can grow food on.
Thank you so much for that. That was a lovely, lovely thing to share, and much appreciated. Okay, I've got a final question, and that is in one sentence, although I suppose if you took 2 or 3, that's not, I'm not going to like beep you or something. I'm not going to be listening for the period or the comma. But in one sentence, what does being an earth steward mean to you? So I'll give you a moment, and whoever wants to.
I do have a one sentence. So.
You knew this question was
I knew this question was coming. So.
I was going to say, if you took too long, I was going to call you out.
No, to me, it's gratitude in action. For me, gratitude in action. Just like show that I'm grateful for all I've received from God, the earth, and show through my actions that I'm grateful and that I care.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me too, you would have to start with that there's some kind of witnessing that seems to be part of it. Witnessing to the truth of God's love for us, and letting that kind of power and spirit flow through us in a way that increases love and abundance in some way. Maybe that's too abstract, but coming back to what you were saying at the beginning, George, that really resonates with me. The idea of the parable of the wise steward is, the steward that there's some kind of increase. Just hiding it away and returning back the gift that you were given and exactly as it was before isn't the point. But that there is some kind of growth both in the steward as well as in, what has been stewarded seems to be important.
I think it's understanding the impact of my agency and trying to give back.
For me, it's living in awe and wonder and seeking connection with others through understanding my place on this earth.
Maybe I'll just end with a quote from Bishop Cassé, since he's our honorary guest tonight in spirit, which, I'm sure many of you felt as I did when you heard this talk, sort of goosebumps head to toe, listening to something that at least I had been praying for a long time. At the end of this mortal existence, the Master will ask us to give an account for our sacred stewardship, including how we have cared for his creations. I pray that we will then hear his loving words whispered to our hearts. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. I'm just so moved by the simple addition of one small phrase in that doctrinal principle, including how we have cared for his creations. So I think that's enough said right there. Thank you all for joining us on this wonderful panel, and for all of you for taking the time to be with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks again to everyone. This is fabulous. And we want to continue the conversation. So we have some refreshments over there. I don't have a casserole, but I do have some delicacies that we like to call Dunford Bakes, and some fruit of varying freshness, I'm sure, but great, and some drinks. And we have a little activity, right, that we're going to do with this. Do you have?
Yeah, I don't think my mic is on anymore. But we have a little bingo card right by your table. So if you want to go by your table, check out our QR codes for more information and things like that. We also have a QR code. We want you to get to know each other. We realize that this is a beautiful community, right? Everyone here is here because we care. And we want you to get to know each other and tell each other about the things that you do to be an everyday steward. So if you grab a bingo card, there's a couple of prompts, and if you win bingo, we will give you an LDSES bandana. or second, first and second. The first two will get an LDSES bandana. Whoa! And if you don't win, but you still want a bandana, we will take donations for those two. Yeah. So we got some swag. Yeah.
And also, one last thing too, if you haven't had a chance to already, we've got a little sheet there where you can just kind of note your attendance and put down your information in case you would, if you're not already getting things from us, you can get, first of all, a link to the recording once it comes out, and then any other ongoing information about either chapters or just being involved with the organization. And we would love that. We have somebody giving and we are going to have someone
it was Jared.
Give us a closing prayer, and that is Mr. Jared Meek from our board. Thank you all again for coming.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful that we could all be here tonight. I'm thankful for the opportunity to meet and to feel the Spirit, especially about this topic that we care about so deeply. We're grateful for the inspiration that was given to the leaders of the church to begin to vocalize these things more clearly in the past few years. We're thankful for the speakers and the panelists. We ask you to bless them for sacrificing their time to be here. And we pray that we'll leave here with an increase of energy and hope, that we will go to our respective homes and neighborhoods and cities and countries and be able to take the things we've learned here to begin to do real stewardship and continue to inspire others. And we pray that will help us to not lose hope and do the best we can with the time that we've been given to respect and care for the creation that was given us. We love thee and are grateful for, again, this time to be here together. And we say it's in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.